Hello, YouTube, and hello, Joshua. I'd like to talk to you directly, as this particular video is directed at you personally, but in the most respectful way I can possibly muster. Um, One of the things I'd like to get across to you is that we are dealing and we are at a time that is abnormal. Okay? This is not the 90s. This is not the early 2000s. We are at a time of very divisive racial tensions. So I don't feel comfortable exactly just talking to you like you or anybody else. It, I can't talk to people. We can't talk to people anymore like they're just people anymore. Now all of a sudden, race has been brought back into the equation in a very huge way, and I don't particularly subscribe to the current far left narrative. Now, for the better part of my life, I used to hold this narrative as absolute orthodoxy, um, but it around 2016 it started to fall a little short, and it did not seem to stack up to scrutiny, nor reason or logic or anything I even recognize. So it's it's not the same anymore, you know. Whereas a few years ago, I could just talk to you like a normal person. Now I have to address you as a white guy talking to a black guy, and that kind of puts a huge giant wooden shoe into the mix. And I would like to reiterate, this is not your doing. This is not your fault. You did what you were compelled to do, what you should have done, and more power to you, Joshua. Um, Now, I'm not particularly sure where you're coming from because I cannot even fathom what it is like to be a black guy growing up in a predominantly white environment. Um, but if you could just give me a little bit of regard here and understand, I did grow up and am still in a predominantly black environment. I don't know where you are from, but I am from the very deep south in a predominantly black environment. I went to predominantly black schools. My friends were predominantly black going to school. My love interests were predominantly black, and my workplaces were and still are predominantly black, and I was and still am in predominantly black neighborhoods. Now, obviously, I'm white, so my family was white. However, you know, I grew up around black people, and being raised around that shaped me, who I am as an individual. Um, and it has a lot to do with my mentality, who I am, the decisions that I make. And whereas you were grateful to have grown up in a predominantly white schools and neighborhoods, Conversely, I would say that I am grateful to have gone to predominantly black schools and been around black people. Now, high school is a little different, but elementary school and middle school, predominantly it was the black kids who were more cordial to me than the white kids. Um, I'll get into it a little bit later in a future video, um, but I wanted to address some of my own leftist triggerings as, the current leftist orthodoxy having been something that I grew up with as infallible narrative that I am now questioning. At about around 2016, I started to kind of go, this isn't adding up anymore. Um, but you had said that you don't talk black, that you talk white, and that you were grateful for going to predominantly black schools. And it kind of just a skosh felt like you were saying that there was something maybe wrong with growing up in a black community and going to black schools, and that was the only issue. That was the only thing that triggered me about your videos. Now, I'm the kind of person who can handle being triggered every now and again. If something triggers me, I get triggered, I get over it. Whereas some people who get triggered will try to literally destroy you. Now, you gotta understand, when I went to Furry Morphicon and Anthrocon, and I went to furry conventions, and took part in person in the furry community, I did find that it was predominantly white. And I know maybe not, this might come as a surprise, but it was a little bit of a culture shock for me because I had never, aside from family gatherings, been in predominantly white environments. So, when I go to a punk rock show, or I go to the goth club, or I go to the furry conventions, and it's mostly white people, it's a little bit of a culture shock, you know? I mean, there's a part of me who's like, okay, well, I'm around my own skin color, okay, it's whatever. But a part of me's like, where's all the black guys? Because I'm not used to it. I'm not used to that. I'm used to stand your ground. I'm used to snitches get stitches. That's what I'm used to. I'm used to not being particularly into hip hop, but thug life, bro. And just being around it and it being a thing and it not being an issue. Now, that's my upbringing. And I'm still in a black community to this day. I mean, all my neighbors are black. Most of my coworkers are black. You know. Uh, but it's okay. I'm not your typical Lucy Lefty who's gonna go cuckoo because I got trigger-a-roos. I can handle being triggered. It's okay to be triggered and see something that you don't like and not flake out about it. I'm used to that. You know, um, I was just letting you know. One furry to another furry. You know, um, this is 2020. This is the 2000s. We are not in 1960. We are not in the 60s. We are not in the 20s. We are not in the 40s. This is no longer Jim Crow. Okay? And maybe, I don't know, I'm just taking an educated guess here, but maybe one of the reasons, especially in these times, why you might be being treated a little differently is because white furries in a predominantly white furry fandom are absolutely terrified to say or do or look the wrong way or do anything wrong around a black guy, because if they do, they can be destroyed. Now, I don't know if you realize this, but if something happens to you, Joshua, it's going to be a big deal. If something happens to me, it's going to maybe go along my minimal sphere of influence. My family's going to be sad. My friends are going to be sad. I'm going to be a dead guy, but nobody's going to care. If you die, there could be riots in the streets. If I die, nobody's gonna care. And it doesn't just apply to me, it applies to every white person in the furry fandom. So, we're not trying to oppress you, bro, but maybe that's why you're being treated a little differently. Now, I understand you just want equal treatment, and I'm trying to treat you equally, but we are afraid. We are terrified. Because we know that one wrong move, we're done. Okay, we are done. And I know it might not be easy to hear, but it needed to be said. And it is meant with absolutely zero disrespect. No disrespect at all. Okay. Not talking black. Okay, I get it. I am from the deep south. Okay. I will never apologize for being from the deep south. I will never apologize to anyone ever for being white. But I make a point to not talk with a southern accent. I respect country music. I like country music, and if you've seen any of my previous videos, I have a very big giant rebel flag in my videos, but I don't talk southern. So when you say you don't talk black, I get it. I would kind of like it if you would have maybe used some more orthodoxy terms like ebonics and maybe not brought race into the issue. But I get it. You know. But just as you were grateful to have been brought up in white schools, I am grateful to have been brought up in black neighborhoods around black people in black churches, and I am grateful to know the Lord and Jesus Christ is my Lord and personal Savior, and I may or may not have had that if I would not have had the black influences in my life. And that is part 2 of Polybius Speaks, and I hope you like it. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know. See you in the next video.